Okay, so here we are for the basics of cryptography. So cryptography is it's an immense, huge field, and you'll be able to focus for this assignment. You're actually going to do another infographic, but you'll be able to focus on an area that interests you most as it relates to cybersecurity. We talked about in past assignments about the encryption of passwords. Encryption is obviously connected to, related to, derived from cryptography. So it's a really good thing to look at within data science and cybersecurity to sort of understand how cryptography works and then how we can relate it to the encryption piece as well. So this is another good assignment to get you uh, understanding the ideology behind encryption and cryptography overall, and again, how it relates to cybersecurity. Cryptography dates way back to ancient times. Maybe as a kid, you remember using one of those ciphers, those manual ciphers where you turn the cipher a little bit and it changes an A to an M or a Q to an R, depending on how you turn the dials of the cipher. And you can actually decode messages using really a basic cipher. So I'm going to share some resources with you. As we do that, I'll talk about some of the principles around cryptography and encryption in particular, and we will go from there. So I'm going to hit share screen. I'm going to go to the document that you have here. Here you're actually going to create, like I mentioned, an infographic around some of the resources that are shared here. And you're going to do it with the same infographic options that you had in other assignments: easily, infogram, visually, pictochart, or SMORE. Then you're going to submit that infographic into as an assignment here. Again, the infographic is a really cool way of sort of looking at all the information that you find in these articles, and based on what I'm telling you as well, and putting it in sort of a cohesive message within, and having a graphic representation of what you have learned. So I'm going to go through a few websites so that you could sort of decide what you want to focus on it. But the basics of what I want on this infographic to submit is, what are the basics of cryptography? You can look a little bit of the history around it. What are the principles around cryptography as a whole? How does cryptography relate? How does it relate to cybersecurity in general, overall? How does it relate to cybersecurity? And you'll see that through encryption and what we do. We talked about passwords in other assignments. Well, passwords are one of those things that you will see, and we'll go through one of these articles. They're not just transmitted out there. They are actually encrypted before they go anywhere, so that people can't access them in transit, essentially from one place to another. When you're accessing things in the cloud or software or whatnot, the passwords are generally encrypted using the basic premise of cryptography to do so. So your data actually gets encrypted using some of these really highly complex methods at this point, and not something as simple as the cipher wheel that I'll show you in just a few minutes. So there's a cool site called Crypty. Basically, you can have a message in here and use a number of different encoding methods. You can use Morse code even if you wanted to encrypt this stuff. But you could do all these different methods of encryption and just see how it comes out. Block cipher. This is some of the modern stuff: hash function, HMAX, RC4. So you can use all sorts of things to encrypt and show how the encryption works. So it's a really cool tool. This is a basic Caesar cipher. It's actually a 7-letter shift. So if you have I, for example, if you count for I, 7 letters from I, it'll be a P. If you have an F, it'll go to M. And there's complexity in these ciphers too. So it's not always just 1 and move down 7. Sometimes it's move down 3. Then once you move down 3, you start there again, you move down 3 more. So the complexity of these really gets high as you move forward and we get into that encryption piece. But this is a really fun site to get a feel of what is going on during these encryptions. Like I said, here, you can do whatever message you want in here, and it will encrypt it based on what you have here. So if I wanted to do an 8-letter or 9-letter shift, you'll notice that it will actually shift what happens when I do that. So you really could do whatever you'd like to do. And see, that's the 8-letter. And you could choose different ciphers too. And you could do a block cipher, and it shows you the key of what that would show. Again, that's not text now, right? Because block cipher is showing the algorithm, the key that it creates, and that it encoded 16 bytes. It can show hello in text or bytes, which is kind of cool, with hexadecimals in there as well. So it's a really cool feature to look at, like what's going on behind the scenes with encryption and ciphers in general. But there's a couple of good articles in here for you to get just a general understanding of what cryptography is, as well as encryption overall. You'll see this symmetric and asymmetric encryption. Some use a private key, some use a public key and a private key. So you'll go through that information as well. You'll see ciphertext a lot, which we just showed you. Hash functions as well. There's a couple really great videos in here. Some real life examples. HTTPS is actually an encrypted way of transferring or connecting on the internet. The connection is encrypted using what's called a transfer layer security, TLS. And again, you see, it used to be SSL, but you a lot of times you'll see with your home networks, with your wireless network. Well, that's all encrypted, right? That's it used to be WEP. And why is WEP not around anymore for those of you who've done wireless stuff? Because it was easy to hack passwords. It was easy to decrypt the information being sent, because it was such a simple translation. If you could liken it to the cipher I just showed you, where it was going A and shifting 7 letters down. Well, WEP for hackers was similar. It was really easy for people to figure out, because it was a simple form of encryption, or a simple cipher, if you will. Then you got into WPA 1, 2, 3 now, where it's just making it more and more complex, and the encryption piece is more and more complex, making it harder and harder for hackers to figure out what that encryption is. So really remember that it went from the simple with these ciphers way back when, and even at the beginning of what we saw as the internet and wireless security and all of this piece here. It went from simple to really complex encryption. It's getting more and more complex. If you ever want to look up something like quantum computing, for example, quantum computing is a scary thing, because it can do what even the fastest computers do now in nanoseconds, as opposed to weeks and weeks and weeks. It might take a supercomputer to figure out or decrypt a password, for example. It can do it in nanoseconds. So these are the things that people are trying to stay ahead of by making sure that things are encrypted in a really good way, or high quality way, so that they can't get hacked. So that there's always this ebb and flow of people trying to stay on top of things, so that they're more complex, so that the hackers can't get in and figure it out. And then the hackers figure it out, and then it becomes more complex again, or a new way of encrypting comes out that makes it more challenging. And it's always this evolution, and who knows what 10 years from now will be. But like I said, one example's there. Passwords also, I mentioned earlier, they're getting encrypted. I mentioned in another video as well, sometimes organizations don't have that data encrypted, and that's when a hacker can get in and grab all of the data and get access to just plain text files of passwords of everyone in the organization, because it wasn't encrypted, or the data isn't encrypted. This all has to do with cybersecurity. So as you go through these aspects, this is what I want you to piece together for an infographic to really generate an understanding of cryptography, encryption overall, and specifically how it relates to cybersecurity. This other free resources, Practical Cryptography for Developers, it really goes into some of these areas specifically: key exchange, encryption, symmetric and asymmetric, which we mentioned before, digital signatures, another one, quantum safe cryptography, just talked about quantum computing, all these different areas. What I'd like you to do for your infographic, pick one of these areas or another one that you think of around cryptography and encryption, include that in your infographic as well. So, I want you to do this to dig into something you're passionate about. A lot of these projects and work that you're doing, you can dig into spaces that you're really passionate about, that you're interested in. And cryptography is such a broad area that allows you to really dig into something you want. And I want this assignment to be able to do that. And I want you to create this infographic. Yes, discuss the basics of cryptography and encryption, discuss how it relates to cybersecurity and cover that in your infographic, but also pick a focus from that ebook and share the details of that specific focus in your infographic, just so you get a really good understanding of how it all works together and still are able to dive a little deeper into one of the concepts. All right, I'm gonna actually stop sharing now. So have fun with this. The cryptography assignment is a really cool thing to get into. The most important thing is to understand how it relates to encryption and data science, data security, cybersecurity overall. And you'll see in those resources, as well as what I've shared with you now and in other videos, the importance of encrypting data to keep it secure. And it all stems from way back when with cryptography and the original ciphers. That's what it started out with, and it's evolved into this really complex encryption way of doing things to help keep us and our information secure.